The Olsinski Law Firm is an official sponsor of Top Bin 90, specializing in personal injury, criminal defense, DWI, family law, and workers' compensation. The Olsinski Law Firm provides professional, trusted legal services to clients facing a variety of challenges. With a team of experienced attorneys dedicated to protecting your rights, the Olsinski Law Firm is the legal support you can count on.
Hi, I'm Justin Olsinski, the founding partner of the Olsinski Law Firm. Me and my wife started this firm back in 2010 with the sole purpose of providing excellent service to our clients, giving our clients a personal touch because we had worked in bigger firms where we saw that not happening. We handle criminal defense matters, civil personal injury, wrongful death, workers' comp, and family law matters. We have a team of attorneys that care about the outcome of your case, and we will fight to make sure that you get the justice you deserve.
Hello, and welcome to the 61st episode of the Top Bin 90 podcast. As Bam Maurer Media here, filling in for Jorge Gonzalez after a winless streak by Charlotte FC. He had to run off to Barcelona to remember what winning was like a bit. And so he went off there. Then he leaves, and Charlotte FC picks up a win, gets right back on track. So here we go. Yep. So I'm here with two special guests. We've got Bryan from CLTFC Yeti Clan and Lee from CLTFC Fan TV. How you guys doing tonight?
Pretty good, man. Thank you for having us.
Heck yeah. Lee?
Yeah, man. All good, man. It'd be good to have a show without Jorge, man. You know, I think
there's a first time for everything, right?
61st episode. That's how many it took to get rid of him.
Yeah. But we had to bring the OG of OGs back, right? In you, Lee. I mean, you have been a part of this show since before me, so had to bring you back for this one, a special occasion here, a non-Jorge show. So
That's
here
right.
we go.
Yeah.
So run through the topics really quick. At the top, we're going to talk about the Charlotte FC's midweek loss to New York City FC on Wednesday, and then them snapping their winless streak with the 3-1 win versus a very heavily injured Toronto FC. We'll then get into Zaha's last game coming up here under his current contract. We're also going to talk about MLS All-Star ballot. That voting opened this last week. And no Charlotte FC players were so far in the top 5 at any position. So we'll get into our thoughts on that. And then the gap of the top 4 in the Eastern Conference and how that's starting to separate themselves from the rest of the pack. And then we'll get into the New England Revolution game, Charlotte FC's opponent this upcoming weekend, their last game before the World Cup break. So let's get right into it, guys. Charlotte FC loses to New York midweek on Wednesday. Lee, just your general thoughts on the match.
God, it was so boring. It was the most boringest game ever. It was hard to just make it all the way through. No, but yeah, I mean, New York came in, did what they needed to do. They scored and got out of there with 3 points. Man, it was tough to watch. It was tough to watch for sure. But you know, Saturday was a little better.
And it just Wednesday just felt frustratingly similar. It's like something we've getting used to, like the Charlotte fans, going down early and chasing the game.
Yeah, I feel like the main set was they had 5, I think, shots total. So even if we, obviously separate out the Kalina gaff in like the first 8 minutes. I mean the mess up there, which I really appreciate that Tim Ream mentioned in the post-match presser that Kalina has saved them so many times that it really isn't about it being on him at that point. To let in one goal, especially when you're at home, to be shut out, I think that's the bigger stat line. You should be given an error, but to not score at home in front of your home crowd, I think is the big let up here, right?
Yeah, 100%. That game was just more than just one mistake by Kalina. It was our offense not producing. How many times have he not bailed us out, and we couldn't? I think I saw some websites register 1 shot on target. Some said 2. That's not enough to even recover or even win the game. So I mean, yeah. Kalina, I'm not mad at Kalina. It was the first time I seen Dean kind of throw a player under the bus and saying like it was his mistake, but he didn't deserve that. I don't believe it. But that's the goalkeeper position. They always remember you for what you did.
just frustrated with the goal, right? I mean, the goal itself was, yeah, right. I mean, you can't blame Kalina. He's kind of carried us for 3 or 4 years now. But,
Mike just slid through our defense, ball a little up to the pass. I mean, it's not his fault.
New York, though, they seem to have our number at home, right? Like they took us out in the playoffs, and they're winning at the bank, and they're more comfortable at the bank than they are at their own stadium.
Yeah, it's crazy how that flipped, because it was, I think before the playoff series, undefeated at the bank. And then ever since that playoff series this last year, the script has really flipped with New York City FC at the bank. And I feel like you could kind of feel it, like the vibe was just off. Maybe obviously that's partially Westwood not being a part of the squad in this one. Huh?
Midweek game.
Yeah, midweek game. Midweek games tend to be a little strange just in general. I think that was like a record amount of goals being scored across the league that night. So a lot of defenses particularly played really poorly. But at the same time, I feel like you still would have liked to see somebody, whether it's BL step up, Zaha, just one of these guys just kind of step up and kind of be the difference for this.
We had chances to equalize. They didn't capitalize in those key moments. Just before the halftime, Zaha had a slick pass to BL, and it was out with the Pep just shot wide. I expected that ball to go in, but we had our chances. We just didn't capitalize.
Yeah, I think that was the big thing, was just like the final third. And I feel like that's one thing this whole season for me that Charlotte has been missing. It's like if it's not one piece of the puzzle, it flips to the other. So like at first it's like, okay, the defense is just giving up a ton of goals. And then Dean started to talk about it, like the last few weeks, they finally really started to lock things down a little bit, giving up fewer chances, a little bit fewer goals, but then now they can't like figure out how to combine well in the final third. And I feel like that's what the New York game encapsulated. And then also just like the home form. And I feel like that was what, because Ray mentioned, is like, man, this happened last April and last May when they went on that long losing streak. But the difference for me was like last year, you had a pretty understandable, excusable absence of home games. It was like 8 out of 10 were on the road. Whereas I think that's what like, you have the draw against Cincinnati, and then you have the loss against New York. And it was like, hey, man, these are like the home games where you expect to kind of be able to stop the bleeding and right the ship. And I feel like that was, for me, was the big difference, was when you have 5 straight with 2 of them in a row being at home. Do you feel like, Lee, there's just been a little bit of a difference in terms of how this team has performed at home so far this year compared to last year?
Oh, absolutely. We're on this another big streak, right? 4 or 5 games, right? So like our first half of the season, if you will, right? Pre-World Cup is pretty much all home games, right?
Yeah.
And what's going to suck is like towards the end of the season when it's tight and we need to get a win and, to squeeze into the playoffs or wherever, right? Maybe we're flipping the script and we will start winning away. But yes, to your point, Bryan, I do think it's a little different this year. It's hard to put your finger on it, right? Some people will say, well, we're missing Malanda. But in my opinion, I think Ajuman stepped up.
Yeah.
I think our problem really is like other than Pep, right? I don't think we really have a true goal scorer, right? Somebody that can actually finish, right? I mean, Vargas had I don't know if you were ready to go into the Toronto game, but Vargas had a pretty good game.
Yeah.
I think Zaha finally showed us what he's about, but I think it's too little too late. Pep continues to be Pep, right? He's definitely the player. And the defensive battle was solid, I thought, this weekend too. But like you said though, Bryan, I think it's either been the top end can't score and the defenders are stopping, or we're scoring and we can't stop goals leaking in, right? And to that point though, are we lacking a midfield, right? Are we, what's going on with Bronico? I know Bronico hasn't been starting, and so then you look at Latour, right? I don't think he's a key player for Charlotte. One player I'm starting to really rate, and I think Bryan and I actually talked about this, is Diani, right? I think he's actually coming in and like he's playing right in front of what appears to be right in front of the defenders, right? And he's willing to carry the ball. I mean, he's prone to lose the ball in some positions, but at least he's sort of progressing the ball forward to link up from the back to the front.
Yeah. And just showing energy. I feel like that's what also this team has lacked a lot, is just like raw energy. I mean, obviously part of that is Bronico. I feel like Bronico being rotated out a decent amount. We saw him back in the lineup this weekend, but I feel like the team just hasn't quite been up for the fight, especially in the early
we don't have
portion.
any like offensive aggression.
Yeah.
Like we may possess the ball, like have a bunch of possession, but we offensively we don't do nothing with it.
Yeah. So I feel like that's definitely that was on display in the midweek game against New York. Was that for me? It was the lack of fight. And then Lee, you mentioned Vargas's performance. Let's get right into the Toronto win, or the Charlotte FC win against Toronto this weekend, 3-1, snapping their winless streak of 5+. Both teams came into this game both on long winless streaks, so something had to give here, and Charlotte FC was able to right the ship for themselves. Obviously, some just the highlights from the game was Zaha getting that goal early, cool, easy as you like. And then Etienne Jr. with almost an immediate response, finding a banger, nobody closing him down. And then there was obviously the controversial call of the set piece for Toronto, where they could have taken the lead, and then it went to VAR review, and that goal was taken off. And then Charlotte FC were able to respond from that, find the second goal. Schnegg with a banger of his own to go 2-1 into the half, and then with a third goal late penalty from Pepiel to put the game away late, 3-1. Let's just get right into it. First half, Lee, what were kind of your thoughts coming out of the gate in this one?
It was good that we scored first, I thought, right? Because that sort of kick starts us right to the rest of the game. But then they sort of came back and equalized, I wouldn't say immediately, but close enough, right? And what a banger that was. And when we were lucky, I think that the ref called that pick or whatever, right? To me, I'm not really sure. I think that was a very soft call, right? And it could have been a completely different story if that had counted, So, the first half, it was, sort of everybody posturing, but, there was some good plays. Like, the banger that guy scored, man, that was a ridiculous goal. But like you see him come in from Burn, and then nobody's shutting him down. We never shut anybody down. Like I don't, Bryan, you probably know the stats of this, but how many goals have we let in this season outside the box? Right? There's at least 3 or 4 that I can think of, right? And that could change. That could have been difference in the game.
Yeah, for sure. You saw him pass right by Burn, and then Westwood, and then Bronico. It was like pretty much 3. He crossed right across all of them with plenty of space. Now, in that moment, and Dean mentioned in the press conference as well that he was hoping that somebody would step and occupy that space. I think part of the problem is also Dean's preference for making sure you're packing the box and allowing space outside the box, preferring that to inside the box. But teams are scoring against them from outside, and so they've got to find a way to start shutting that down more often than not. You'll hear Dean say, like, well, low percentage looks. Well, okay, well, when you give them to certain players, they're capable of turning those lower percentage looks into higher percentage looks. I think Evander against Cincinnati is one of those great examples of it. And he showed it against Charlotte when he got a bit of space. He just put had 3 seconds to think about that look and put it. When you give that guy who's like the skills challenge king, you put him in a spot where he can just drop a dime like that. You can't allow that kind of space.
No, 100%. And again, but it showed on the top of the box when Schnegg scored his goal, right? Like if you give players space and they take that shot.
Yep.
But we've been screaming that for 5 years. Shoot outside the box. Shoot outside the box. Just take a pop shot. I don't care if it goes over, goes wide, keeper saves it, hits a player. Like at least it makes them have to step out and it can give you space for the pass to somebody else, right?
Well, and then especially on top of that, now you have the potential for it to be a ricochet and it either go in or it goes out wide for a corner kick, where now Charlotte FC all of a sudden are one of the top set piece teams in MLS right now. And just in terms of the amount of volume, and even in this game, Morrison draws a penalty late to get the third goal off of a set piece as well. Bryan, just your thoughts on the game.
I really like that Charlotte came out early with like urgency and attacking intent from the beginning. They scored that goal first and Toronto equalized, but they never let down the gas. They kept pushing, and that's what won in the game. They were better. They were the better team in transition, and Toronto, they were missing a lot of key players. It was a game that we needed to win.
Yeah, I think if they had lost or even drawn that game, I think there would have been a ton of questions asked just because of how much Toronto there. I mean, I didn't recognize. I don't know. I would say I credit myself with knowing this league pretty well, but I didn't recognize a ton of guys on that Toronto FC 11 when they announced the lineups, and that part of that is because they were probably missing at least half of their starters in that one. So I feel like Charlotte FC absolutely, no matter how you shake it up, have to get the result in that one. They did. They got the job done.
Great.
Which is obviously that's the key moving forward, is just at the end of the day, get the result. And I think it was getting back to the basics a little bit too, like just get a lead, because they hadn't had a lead since their last win in April 18. Just having a lead, I think, was a big thing too. Just being in front, even if it was only for a couple minutes that first stretch, but having a lead, losing it, getting it back. I think just sort of those things are just remembering what it's like to lead from the front and kind of control aspects of the game in game states. And then volume, Lee, like you said, just shooting from anywhere, getting 18 shots. I don't think they've ever come close to 18 shots besides maybe against like Red Bull New York when they were up a man. And so they just had the ball the whole time. And, but when they're even strength, they just haven't produced the volume needed.
Yeah, it's going to be a long season, I feel.
You feel, so win not convincing you in any stretch of the imagination yet?
No, I mean, to what you just touched on, right? All their injuries they had, I think it would have been a completely different game if Toronto had their players, right? I mean, obviously we can all speculate, but 3-1's 3-1, man. So I'll take it, take the 3 points, and keep on going.
Yeah,
and Charlotte scoring first. There's been countless times this season where Charlotte scores first, and a few minutes later, the other team equalizes. We've never been able to keep a lead this season. So as soon as they equalized, I thought it was going to be a bad game for Charlotte because we don't keep leads. I'm glad we pulled it off, but
some of the big pundits always say, though, right? And I've always heard it, like growing up watching the sport. The worst time to defend is right after you scored, right? Because everybody sort of switched off and not plugged in like they were. So the fact that they scored, I'm just glad that goal got called off, right? Even though, honestly, I don't think it was a foul. I mean, the guy basically just stood there, right? And Takamati just ran into him, right? I mean, that was the plan, but they've been pushing hard on those, like the pick rule, right? And I don't think it was a pick, to be honest with you. But we got the call. I'll take it. My team won, so screw what Toronto thinks about it.
Yeah, sometimes you just need a little bit of fortune to fall your way to try to get you out of a rut, which obviously Charlotte FC, I would say, is still in. And I think that a lot of the fan base, I mean, based even on today, I posted on the Top End channel about the All-Star ballot, and a lot of the responses were like, why would we have anybody in the All-Star game? Like, we suck. And that was like a pretty common thread in the response to fan base. So I think this win at best just kind of like stopped the bleeding for a minute, and just like, but I think right now, and maybe even more so than last year, I feel like there was a time last year, obviously during this same stretch where they just had a rough spell, but a lot of people, me included, cast it to tons of road games, having to deal with just that many in a row over and over again for like an entire, I think all of May and part of June, they just only played on the road. And so having that kind of stretch was pretty explainable as to why the results weren't falling their way when they were just dealing with that much travel. Whereas this year, again, like these home games, they've already almost dropped as many points at home this year than they did all of last season. Last year, they dropped 11 points. They've already dropped 10. And I think for me, that's where the apprehension really is going into the second half of the season, is like you said, Lee, like they're like a record amount of road points it's needed if they're going to actually meet the floor of what this team and the expectations are for this season are. They're going to have to go on a road stretch. And I think that's, for me, some of the apprehension is just, can they do that? They've never done that. Last year, they were talking about how they had a record amount of points on the road, and it's not going to be enough, most likely this year. So just kind of where your guys' thoughts are at with the season. I mean, where it's at. I mean, obviously, it sounds like pretty unanimous, below expectations so far this year, but what kind of is needed for them to kind of right the ship at this point?
I mean,
with you, Lee.
Yeah, I mean, below expectations, I don't know. The club sort of set expectations, right? They came out, said top four, right? And everybody here is top four, and it's like we're supposed to be a top four team, and we sit in seventh, right? I think we're right where we should be, right? I mean, personally, I go back to day one with this club. I just don't think this club has been built out as a squad. I think it's just more individual skill, right? And as a squad, for some reason, we just can't jive now. Is that on Dean? Is that on Zoran? Is it on the players? Like, we could debate this all day, right? But honestly, I just don't think the squad's been built out good, as best as it could be since day one, right? And, is that because we're in Charlotte, yada, yada? That's a whole nother debate. But yeah, I mean, 7th, I'm going to be surprised if we actually make the playoffs this year, to be honest with you, right? Because of the amount of road games that we've got coming up, right? We know how the team is on the road, right? We don't expect to win on the road, right? We're happy when we do. We're elated. We get, we might nick a draw or two, right, along the way. But ideally, we all go in the back of our heads, we're probably going to lose this one. Let's just hurry up and get back to the bank, right? And so to be in 7th right now, I think that's probably we're hitting right where our team is. And I'll leave it at that.
Bryan?
Just to add on what Lee was saying, if we can barely win at home, I'm not confident we can do it on the road. There was games this season where, like Miami against their B team, against their MLS Pro team, those are 3 points that we should have grabbed because our last game of the season is Miami away. And by that time, they'll probably get it together and win at their fun new stadium. But yeah, for me, it's Westwood in his last year, like I think the last press conference said we're a top 4 team next year. Same thing with the club, and it's a Sauron problem. Like, Dean's doing the best he can, but I like to say you can't make chicken salad out of chicken poop, and some of these guys are not producing.
So it sounds like both of y'all at this point have really keyed in on roster being the main issue at this point, and Zoran. So obviously this is all speculation, but Zoran feeling a little bit of the hot seat, especially going into a summer window where he specifically has called for this, right? Where the summer transfer window lines up with Europe. It finally has. They have the full long break with a ton of games after the fact as well, with still 19 games to kind of work a summer signing into the mix. This feels like then, based on obviously what you guys are saying as well, kind of a make or break moment maybe for Zoran in the front office, would you say?
Yeah, 100%. Especially when you went on the documentary and said, I don't want players that don't want to come to Charlotte. Dude, your job is to sell Charlotte. You're a GM. And if he's been saying that they're waiting to line up the schedules. If he doesn't deliver, if Saha goes and Abada goes and we don't get an equal, like, a caliber player or better, he needs to go. In my opinion, he should have left when, like, they got rid of the president, Joe LeBou. He should have been part of that squad that left the club.
See, yeah, I mean, obviously, man, you don't want somebody to lose their job, right? Just on the human level. But when it comes down to football, right, it's a results business. And that's where you make your money. And me personally, I don't, obviously we gave him, the first year, 2-3 years, right? It was like, all right, we're a new club, new build, right? It's going to be hard to sell Charlotte, right? Out the gate, right? Because nobody knows, but people want to come to a winning club, right? Yeah. And I just think that Zoran, he focuses too much, I think, in Europe, right? I think there should be some more focus maybe in South America, right? Or even towards like Africa and Asia in that way. But, again, from the way I understand it is we do have like scouts in various places across the world. I just don't think that with the squad we've got, right, I just don't think it's been built well, right? Now, Dino's come in. He's had to flush out some players, right, that obviously didn't fit his thing. But still, you look at depth, right? When Zaha's out, who do we put in, right? We're looking at some rookies, right, which, some of them are stepping up. When Vargas goes off, we put Abada in. That Abada, $8 million. That was a Zoran call out, right? Zoran is not hit on one DP yet. And I think he got lucky with Pep, and Pep just happened to finally sort of get into the flow of Charlotte, on his loan and everything. And it's paid off, right? Now, if we could get two more Peps, I think we'd be cooking. But at the end of the day, man, I just think it's time maybe to get somebody that knows the MLS a little better than Zoran. And, let's see what happens. But with that being said, too, I think we're going to give him to the end of the season, and we'll probably give him that sprint race, right, for next year. And then
we'll get some discovery money.
Yeah.
I do think, I 100% agree, especially with the looking for domestic players. I feel like that's one area that Charlotte has, from day one, they really pushed Europe and finding kind of under the radar European players. Even Africa, like you mentioned, like, I mean, Rodolfo Loco, you know, finding these guys kind of under the radar in Africa as well, but not maybe finding the under the radar DP quite enough. I think that's where Pep Biel kind of falls in. And I think that's really what MLS is bread and butter. If you look at like the top MVPs, obviously like Messi and some of the big names Miami is finding excluded. But like if you look at the mid-market MLS teams, are just the teams that have really built a long-term project. Even like look at Nashville now, like Hani Mukhtar, since day one, he just scored his 100th goal in all competitions for Nashville. I mean, and nobody really was talking about him as a big name when he came in, but just really slotted in, fit well there, got married on their field like that. So like really like you're talking about roots, like that's somebody who's like their life is Nashville SC, right? And so I think players, and I think Pep Biel fits that mold. Like I think Pep is really vibing with being the guy in this team. I think there's a lot of players, whether it's in Europe or just around the world, that would vibe with like, hey, I can make $3 to $5 million, play in a town. Maybe I don't know that well yet, but I know the living conditions and my family upbringing and everything else will be good. And I can be an absolute superstar, a legend for this club for a long. Carlos Hill, another guy, decade long, and knew like he's going to go down as like build the statue, right? That kind of stuff for these teams. And I think there's a lot of players out there in that range. Like, man, I can make this much money. I can have this kind of life for my family, and I can then go down as an absolute star, an absolute legend. That's like not a lot of other leagues can offer that. And I think that's something that Charlotte should really hone in on way more. And if Zoran can do that this summer, and then obviously you got to see the next, you know, the fall season and then go into the spring season next summer to see if that actually lands. And then domestic, I think domestic is where Charlotte has always woefully kind of fallen short, whether it was the Bill Tuiloma move, big Gam signing that didn't pan out at all. We're looking at Eric Williamson, also kind of took a bit of a red flag risk on him with the torn ACLs in both knees, and that didn't pan out. We're looking at Luka. So it seems like more recently they've identified that as a problem, but still haven't been able to get the results.
Yeah, I think Dean has brought that out, right? He's the one sort of pushing that, right? And like you said, but I think Luka has been a miss, right? I mean, I would love for him to finally get his feet under him and be the player that he can be. Yeah. But I just don't think he will be, at least us here in Charlotte.
Yeah, I feel like for me, Luka specifically is more of that's a Dean. I think that one I put more on Dean. Like that was clearly a Dean Zoran combo piece. That was like, hey, we got to figure out how to move the ball a little bit better, progress it. Let's get a ball carrier. Let's get a guy who kind of has a little bit of vision, knows the league a little bit. And I don't think Dean has figured out the solution of how to get him to fit into this group. Yeah. I do think Luka specifically for me is on that one is more on Dean. Yeah, I was impressed that they actually made that move. Yeah. For me, they put in a lot of money to get and invested. I mean, he's long term. I mean,
he's long term.
He doesn't work out. I mean, he's here till 2029. So I mean, he's long term. They've bought in on him. So
but that's to my point, right? Zoran has gone off and gone on, you know, and I think Dean probably finally got in Zoran's ear and was like, look, man, we need to look more domestic, right? And then that pulls in the Luka, right? And you're not going to hit on all of them, right? I mean, I don't expect us to be 100%, you know, but damn it, we're not even batting 300, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely correct. They got to be able to hit more. And if Zoran doesn't, I think this is his window. Like this has got to be, he's been calling for it. He's been one of the, I'd say maybe probably the loudest, like publicly vocal advocates for this change. And now he's gotten it. And it's a World Cup year. And it's a World Cup year in the US where you have like Scotland in Charlotte and teams around like what Norway and Germany are in North Carolina. So it's like you have, the word is going to get out. Like there's like 4 teams hanging out in Kansas City. Like the word on a lot of these cities, mid-market teams, is going to get out after this summer. And so there's a time.
So do you call to both of you guys? I'm going to throw a question to both of you guys, right? Is this Zoran's make or break window?
100%.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, I think you brought in Dean to raise the floor. He's risen the floor. I mean, obviously there seems to be some cracks in it right now. And I think he's got to figure out how to get points on the road to balance out when home form doesn't match up. But I think at this point, you've got 2 years of 50-plus points. but you got to find a ceiling, whether it's with Dean, whether it's with players. You got to find that next level. Otherwise, this stagnates. And we saw what happened in Orlando when the floor gives out. We've seen it in Nashville when the floor gives out. We've seen it in Philly with so when teams that buy in on the high floor and fans are like, okay, cool, well, we're in the mix. As soon as you're not in the mix anymore and you have no trophies to kind of fall back on and no like really historical moment to kind of bank on, it's really hard to convince everybody that everybody needs to stick around when it's like, hey, well, like nobody remembers fourth place finishes and first round exits. Like nobody remembers that.
I mean,
so
that's why the US the cup was a big thing for us, man. You know,
I think so. And I think that's actually one other aspect that kind of lets you down when it comes to the amount of European influence on Charlotte FC that's in the front office, in the coaching staff, and everywhere is like they don't quite know what the U.S. Open Cup is. And you could kind of like, for example, Bruce Arena, San Jose, they're leading the Supporters Shield at that time. I think they're a point off or two now, but at that time, leading Supporters Shield, they rotated to play round of 16 U.S. Open Cups. They rotated an MLS play to bring their starters out for U.S. Open Cup. Now, obviously, maybe feeling that a little bit, like Dean said, precaution. I don't want Pep getting hurt, this and that. San Jose took the risk. A couple of their players are hurt. They're still fighting for points and this and that, but they viewed U.S. Open Cup as an important part of their schedule to kind of keep pushing and have, that extra competition both at the end of this month of the quarterfinal and a semifinal potentially in September, which I think right now, if you're Charlotte FC and especially Charlotte FC fans, you would love a semifinal in September based on where things kind of go, especially into the break, depending on the result this weekend. You'd be really pushing for and loving a semifinal opportunity in September based on where things stand now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. I think we've covered that pretty well. See here, if we finally got the ball to the feet of Pep, Edon, Kerwin, and Wilf driving forward Saturday night. Haven't seen that in weeks. That style is a better fit for Luka, but his defense is atrocious. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I feel like hit or miss just with the attack. It's just none of it has been consistent. I mean,
Luka, was he supposed to be brought in as like a box to box player or just to help us progress the ball offensively?
Ball progression, specifically from box to box per se, but like I would say more just in general, just ball progression. However you view that role, he can do that from the 6, he can do that from the 8, he can do that from the 10. Depending on how they kind of line up. But I would say like main thing is like, can he get the ball on his foot, make a quick turn, carry it forward, and get that next pass and just move. I would say just getting the ball forward fast and in more volume. I think again, we've talked about this. And we'll continue to talk about it. It's just the volume of ball progression in the dangerous areas around the box is what has always been lacking with this club, at least, especially under Dean, is just not quite having the amount of shots I think necessary. I think it's good to have the efficiency like they've had, especially last year. They were really efficient in scoring a decent amount of goals with limited shots. I just feel like it's so hard to bet on that. Like if you only have 10 shots a game and hoping to get 2 or 3 goals a game off that, that's a really high finishing rate. And they've had that. I think they've been able to bank on that a little bit with Biel and Zaha, but at some point players cool off. Like that's just how it goes. And so I think Luka was a big part of like just finding that ball to then connect Biel in the final third, maybe hoping that Biel wouldn't have to drop back so much. Because that's what, for me, Biel has also had to do a lot. He's had to drop back to help build the ball up. But then, and this was the same situation that Janzio dealt with with Karol Swiderski. He would drop deep. Karol Swiderski would drop deep, and then you're like, okay, but your best finisher isn't in the box now because he's dropping deep, trying to pick the ball up. And I think that's where we're kind of standing with Biel a little bit. He's got to pick the ball up in the midfield to get it forward, but then you also don't have your best player in and around the box when you can't have him do both because you just don't care. You don't have the ball that much.
Yeah, so, and Zaha does that too. He drops out to the midfield, gets fouled there, and
yes, and then he's not in the final third as well. I think that's an issue for all these guys. Like just Luka was supposed to be the guy who could help do the ball progressing without having to have Zaha drop in or Biel drop in, and so you could allow these guys to make those line breaking runs. As Dean Smith says, like we're not making enough line breaking runs, and I think a big part of that was supposed to be Luka's helping this team do that. But anyway, this actually segues us right into my next topic: Zaha's last game coming up under contract. How do we kind of feel? Let's just kind of get a general vibe check of where we're at with Zaha coming up with his last game. Obviously has been a talisman type signing in terms of just his aura surrounding the signing from day one. I would say social media wise and just interest has been definitely drawn, whether it's been positive or negative. He's kind of drawn it all during his time here, but kind of where are your guys kind of standing with his last game coming up, Lee?
Man, get that man out of my club.
Okay.
Get that man out of my club, right? I was saying it when we first got him signed, right? Yeah, it's a great signing, right? It's a big name for Charlotte, right? And it did bring a lot of attention to the club, right, worldwide, right, or at least from Europe. But at the end of the day, Instagram followers and retweets are not going to get you goals, right? And I think, we all know that man's getting fouled, right? And we've seen it for almost 2 seasons now. If he can get in his head, he's going to lose his mind. He's going to get out of the game. He's not going to perform, right? And so, it's obvious, right? I mean, the guy's got talent. There's no doubt in my mind he's got talent, but it shows up too irregular for me, right? And, it proves it, right? I mean, the guy didn't even make the World Cup team, so, what does that say, right? And then he comes out, he's got a chip on his shoulder, something to prove, he bangs in a goal, right? The only other time I really can say that I felt like he really showed up for Charlotte was, that first home game he played for us, and he was man of the match, right? And then he came out and said, like, he wants this every week. Where you been, right? So it's like, I don't know, man. Let that guy go, man. I don't know how he is in the locker room, but I kind of feel like he might be a little bit toxic, right? He's got that attitude of like, I'm the shit, or at least that's the way he comes across, right? And I don't know. I think he got humbled by not making the World Cup, and he came out pissed off, scored, right? We know you're getting fouled, right? Just let the refs and let Westwood and all them talk to him, right? I mean, yeah, it's fine, call some of it out, right? But like, get in that man's head, take him out of the game. Charlotte's a whole nother team.
Yeah.
Bryan?
When Charlotte first signed him, it was awesome. Like Wilfred Zaha, like it's a big name player. First game against Atlanta scores. And then just seeing the on-field antics, like Lee said, he gets fouled and he just goes to his head. That was like it. We really never saw that. Like I don't think we ever saw the best of Saka in Charlotte.
No.
Yeah.
He was suspensions, injuries. When we needed him against New York, got suspended.
I mean, he's always trying to talk himself into the book.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've just had enough of it, right? It's like, either play and show us what you can do or move on, right? And it doesn't sound like too many people are knocking on this door either.
No, I feel like there was a video that came out during Charlotte FC's game in New York where he kind of like chased down a couple players from New York to their locker room a little bit. Like, obviously not all the way, but like they were like walking off the field towards the locker room in the tunnel. And he's like chasing down like Truin and I think O'Neal. And they both kind of like even like elbow him a little bit and just like tell him like, back off. It's like halftime. And he's like just going on and on. You can kind of see Pep Biel walk behind and look back. I mean, obviously I'm not going to try to fully like summarize what I think, what Pep Biel is for sure saying in his head, but what it looked like, it was also Pep Biel was just like, man, it's just like kind of a surprise reaction of just like, it keeps happening, things like that. It just seems like it's so public. And that's, I think, what for me is struggling, whether it's just on the field all the time. And I think also maybe I look at the game a little bit differently now than I used to, just being a dad and just seeing like with 2 little kids and like kind of seeing like, how do people compose themselves emotionally, mentally, especially men, like for my young son, like, and just how do they handle these different types of situations? And I know it's a high pressure situation. I know emotions are running high, and all those kind of things. But at the same time, it's like, I don't see everybody doing this.
Yeah.
I don't see everybody doing this. I see one man doing this a lot more than most others. And I do also feel like this is partially on the way maybe Dean composes himself and approaches himself as a coach, and where he like really tries to defend his guys a lot. And I think it's kind of egged it on a little bit, where he's kind of always backed him up no matter what the case may be. And I feel like, maybe that's just his approach and that just is what it is. But at some point, I think, and even towards the end of last season, Dean mentions like, hey, I talked to Zaha about his emotional control and stuff like that. I feel like Dean maybe should have leaned into that a little bit more and made it seem like, hey, Zaha, you're like not above everybody. And like, you need to be able to find a way to tone it down. Because I feel like there was multiple times where Dean pretty much went as far as to say like refs are like discriminating against him. Like pretty much that was almost the tone that he uses. Like he said he was like worried that they might be or something along those lines. And I think when you are willing to go that far and maybe put that much of it on the refs, it gives your players the freedom to be like, well, yeah, it's not my fault.
No, I disagree with that, Bryan. Right?
Really?
So,
okay.
Yeah, I would say in public, right? When you're in a press conference, right? You're defending your players, right? It's
okay.
You put it on my shoulders as the coach, the gaffer, or whatever you want to call me, right? Okay. You know, and then behind closed doors is when you have those conversations, right? So you can distract that sort of pressure that's coming towards Zaha or whoever you want to put somebody's name in there. Okay. And I think some of the best coaches deflect back from the public perception, right?
You try to put the narrative.
Yeah, you blame it on the refs, right? You blame it on whatever, right? You know, they were failing me. I'm like, you just, you know, blah, blah, blah. But once you get in the locker room, you go up to him and you have that stern conversation, right? It's like, you don't call him out. I mean, it's like any job, right? If you're getting called to HR, right? You're not going to talk about it with others, right? So you just kind of keep it in-house, right? You protect your players at all costs, regardless on how silly the excuse may be. Right. And yeah, I mean, come on, man. You know, some of them calls the refs have made, right? MLS refs in themselves are terrible. Right. I'd even say globally at this point, these refs are terrible with VAR and everything. But, you know, again, I think Dino protects him in the public, and then behind closed doors, you put your arm around him, you have this conversation. And then, you know, what I would have done is if I had had that conversation behind closed doors, Zaha still continues his antics and everything, bench his ass for a game.
See, that was going to be my next point, was like, because we never actually saw that. And so I feel like the next action step, if Dean actually was following through on protecting him publicly from the public eye, but then also handling it behind the scenes, is I think at some point we might have seen a cooling off period where it's like, hey, Zaha, like it's impacting you to where you told media that you might not play here anymore because of the refs. Like it's at that level when you're that hot, where like you're willing to like turn down millions of dollars because of that. Like everybody is dealing with this. Like Charlotte FC we just talked about them getting a result partially because the refs made calls in their favor, right? So everybody is dealing with this in various capacities. So again, I feel like if we had seen Dean handle the public part like he did, like you said, and I think that's a fair point, Lee. I think the issue for me is then like at some point the field should have also maybe told the story of like, hey, they're also trying to find a way to help him cool off the field and send a message. And that's, yeah, like you said, benching him for a game, like not just waiting for the yellow card accumulation, but actually giving him like, hey, take a full week off, not just on the short week where you're getting your Monday soft tissue treatment or whatever the case they said about that. Like, here's a full week, reset, come back in and like, because we like it's showing on the field in this way, you know, whether it's, you know, however the locker room's handling it. Like I think at some point, like, you know, there should have maybe been more action in one way or the other. And I think part of it, like it was allowed to kind of to boil over, like, and that,
because Dean should like I don't think Dean ever did anything about it, because I remember last season Atlanta away, Abada didn't even make the team sheet for no reason. I get it, and everybody thought that's kind of Dean's way of sending a message. He should have done that with Zaha, but maybe the star power or just
to that point,
the headache of his ego, just Dean didn't want to deal with it.
I mean, to that point though, right? With Abada, the we could put Vargas in, right? If you put Zaha on the bench, right? Even I would have made him sit on the bench and bringing him about 65th, 70th minute, right? Just so that he had to suit up, sit there and whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But you look over, like, who were we bringing in? Who were we like really bring in that, like, because I mean, right now we're starving for points, right? And you know, especially knowing that here in the future we're gonna have a bunch of away games. So why? Yes, it's like, let me punish you, right? The problem with that is goes back to the Zoran question, the squad build out, right? We've got nobody that can kind of come in and allow Dino to have that sort of flexibility to say, look, dude, you're not showing up, right? Sit your ass down. We're gonna make you dress out. Even if they don't play him, we're gonna make you dress out and you're gonna be on that bench. But who do you bring in that's gonna, like, at least, I mean, like Bingold right here, he just posted, right? I mean, it's not like Zaha was putting up elite numbers, but we still didn't have really anybody that's going to come in there, right, and say like and sort of at least give us as much as what Zaha was giving us. As bad as it was.
Yeah.
And to put the cherry on top, I think Saha's biggest problem is himself. He's one of those guys to read. He reads all the comments. He looks at everything. I think for me, I stopped got away from his hype when he confronted Jorge in that press conference, because that's somebody that listens to everything. Mentally, that's not good. If you're looking at the comments and you're a professional footballer,
I mean, it's got against you. Imagine being dragged every day, all day, right? But I mean, just look at it, right? I mean, he was at Palace. He was a big fish in a small pond there. He tried to go to United, couldn't make it. Came back to Palace. Palace had enough of his shit, shipped him off to Turkey or whatever. And then they were like, "No, we don't want him." And then Charlotte came along, and it's the same song and dance, man. At some point, it's the player, right? Not the coaching staff.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think Zaha absolutely has to take a lot of the heat and criticism that's gone his way, and I think it all has primarily focused on him. I think we could have a podcast all on its own, just of the Zaha, the Zoran, and Dean Smith triangle. I think we could go on like this for at least another hour. But we'll move on to. We still got a couple more topics I was hoping to get into, and we'll see if we can get through them real quick. We've got MLS All-Star ballot is open. It opened last week. And we just saw the opening sort of results from the fan voting and media voting. And Charlotte FC didn't have anybody in any position in the top 5. I think I was only really surprised by Pep Biel not being in there, but I just wanted to kind of get you guys' general thoughts on the All-Star ballot. It being hosted in Charlotte, I think is also just a big deal for this city, especially right after the World Cup. But give me your general thoughts on just the All-Star ballot, All-Star game. Bryan, let's start with you.
I think it's awesome that the All-Star MLS All-Star is coming to Charlotte. It's MLS. It's pretty much the MLS showcase in Charlotte, but I'm surprised that Pep's getting the snub. 11 goal contributions and not making top 5. Very surprising. I would have earlier I said Kalina, but I guess it had a clean sheet this season, so that's on them. But very surprising that Pep's not on there. Maybe he can make a last-minute push, but with the World Cup break coming in, we really haven't. Really nothing to go by. So.
Yeah. Lee?
Yeah, I mean, the same thing, right? Pep should at least be on the list, right? Other than that, as we were talking pre-show, right? I mean, somebody quoted, like, who in Charlotte deserves to be on the list, right? Nobody really stands out, right? I mean, Kalina, I think I just have a soft spot for him because he's like, I used to talk so much smack about that guy, and I've eaten crow, and I appreciate what he does for Charlotte, but yeah, Pep's the only one that really jumps out, right? But then the other side of that is the All-Star thing is always going to be sort of like a popularity contest as well, right? So you're going to have your big names, and then the Messis, it was good to see Lloris in there, and Sonny, I think, was on there too, right? So it's going to be, I'm looking forward to it in Charlotte. It's going to be like the first time I'm going to actually sit outside the supporter section and just sort of sit and watch the game versus being all in there jumping around and cheering on the team, right? So I'm looking for a good afternoon of a good game of football.
And then somebody like Saha, who has the name power, doesn't have the.
Yeah, he ain't got the numbers.
Don't got the numbers to even get put on the ballot.
Yeah.
Yeah, same with I think Ream is another one who you would think maybe has the name power, especially when you see the U.S. men's national team. Players that got selected. So, like, I mean, here's an example. Like Diego Luna got in we're saying got in. These guys just have the top 5 votes. So only one of these guys at each position is actually going to get in. But the idea that Diego Luna right now is voted more so than Pep Biel shows like just how much pull the U.S. men's national team poll has in this kind of polling and voting and stuff like that. So Ream not being on here over some of these other names, like, I mean, Daniel Mooney for San Jose. I don't think anybody knows who this guy is. Before this year, a college player. I mean, been incredible for San Jose, but kind of came out of nowhere this year. Or even another center back, Mbekezeli Mbokazi for Chicago. Again, first-year player. I don't think many people, but this is like people keying in on some of these up-and-comers in this league. And, snubbing out maybe a U.S. men's national team legend like Tim Ream. I honestly imagine Tim Ream fits the bill for me for like a Garber commissioner's pick. I'm pretty sure that fits the bill for what Garber would pick with a commissioner's pick if Dean doesn't already pick him. I think that's where also the caveat is, where I think maybe compared to last year or previous seasons where Charlotte fans maybe get a little bit more worked up about them not having representation, or the potential for representation is like there's almost no chance Dean doesn't pick at least 2 or 3 players from Charlotte FC.
The home coach gets to coach and gets to pick somebody, and then the commissioner picks somebody too.
Yeah, so 11 players. So from this voting that got released, what essentially happens right now is players are voting, fans are voting, and media is voting. They're all voting on a 4-3-3 formation, and they'll get to pick essentially just 11 players, and then the top players from that 4-3-3. And I do love that they have a deep mid position out there, so it makes sure like a Berhalter or somebody similar will get in fan voting wise. And then after those 11 players are picked, Dean Smith will pick another 13 players himself. There's almost, I would bet money it's at least the over under is 2.5 on Charlotte FC players.
Bronico up, man. Get Bronico in there.
Bronico in there.
I guarantee Dean Smith will pick 2 or 3 for sure. I'd put the line at 2.5 right now. I think I have it at 2.5. Charlotte FC players Dean Smith's picking, because at this point Dean Smith said he has spent 0 time looking at the All-Star break. So right now he's only looking at Charlotte FC players to begin with, and he's got about a month of research time left to do.
14. How many games we played this season? 12, 13 games, man, to look at other players.
Yeah, that's true. Fair point. Although he did say that Atlanta rotated really heavy in that U.S. Open Cup game, and they did not rotate anywhere near as heavy. So something was off there for me. That's why I called him out like that.
Last year's tape.
Yeah. Fair.
Yes, I think Pep got overlooked. But then the other thought, though, to that real quick is it that, like Charlotte's numbers at the games have started dropping off, like, I'd say pretty big, like 6,000-7,000 in my opinion on average, right?
Yeah.
So it seems like the Charlotte fan base is less engaged, where we might have had a close Pep Biel or something, and they could have used the Charlotte fan base to push them up in the list, right? So there's lots of moving parts here, but yeah, I think out of all of them, I was surprised Pep wasn't on it, especially with his numbers so far this season.
No, I think that's a fair point, Lee. I mean, it was on Wednesday night. It was, by my count, when I look back through, I'm pretty sure that was a record low for an MLS regular season game at 23,900, I think it was. For me, from what I've seen, that was a record low. It was a light crowd. I don't think Wednesday game, obviously, permitting, is usually going to be a little bit of a lighter crowd, but Wednesday against New York was particularly light.
Yeah.
So
where do we get, like, how does the team get these numbers? Like, people scan their tickets? Because they seem impressive to me.
It's official attendance. So you're going to go by just, literally scan tickets. So you're a combination of, imagine, like season tickets, club seats, just anybody who like has gone through the scan system of that's the only way you can actually count it, is just like who's actually purchased tickets. So I don't think it actually has to be about who shows up. It just has to be who has received a ticket. Yeah. I'll check in with comms to confirm that. I'll do that. I'll do my due diligence this Saturday.
There you go.
I'm pretty sure that's how it works, is because you have to have some sort of official data of numbers that come in, and you have to have an endpoint when you call it. That's so.
But overall, every year it's been a drop off like 8%, right? Of people in the cup stopping them.
Yeah. It's been pretty much year over year. I mean, the honeymoon phase is over, right? And I think that's what this season and really the last couple seasons have indicated. And I think that's why, for me, I didn't give maybe Eric and Christy as much of a heart, because they kind of walked into what was already kind of ending. And it's like, okay, now how do you figure out what phase 2 looks like? Because no matter who it was who takes over, has to figure out what ends after the honeymoon phase. First and foremost, you get wins, and then you fix a lot of your problems. And
you connect with the fans.
Yep, connect with the fans and win games, and I think those two things change the equation moving forward. I liked this question that came in here. So if we were going after 2 DPs this summer, what positions should they look for? Left wing and right wing. I'll open up the floor. Lee, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, obviously somebody's got to play Zaha, right? Like the writing's on the wall. That man's not going to renew his contract, right? If he does, I'd be surprised. Now, the second one, I mean, I think we're fine with Vargas on the right. I think him and Pep's relationship off the field has helped Vargas greatly. Would I love Abada to step up? No, Abada's gone. So then where do we go for that second DP slot, right? I think personally I would start Archie over Takamati at this point. I would look for, a solid midfielder, right? A box-to-box midfielder at DP caliber.
Nice. Bryan?
For me, obviously a replacement for Saha, same caliber or better, and then somebody in the midfield. I mean, because we probably can still keep Vargas for another season or two, but somebody in the midfield that can help what supposed to do what Luca's supposed to be doing, help us progress the ball forward, make the job easier for Pep.
I also think for me, you guys talk about replacing Luca or having somebody else in the midfield. I think the bigger question for me is like what happens post Westwood. I feel like every time he misses a game for whatever the reason may be, whether it's suspension, injury, sickness, like the team is just not the same. Like it's just the fight isn't there. The person out there riding the ship, getting the lines back together, like the amount of just different intangibles that Westwood does for this group, whether it's just being vocal, whether it's just being capable of crashing the box, making a lot of the runs, and obviously we're still seeing a little bit of a drop off, maybe compared to what he was in 2024. But at the same time, he just continues to be so pivotal to this group. And I think having your sort of heir apparent in place of hey, what's next after Westwood? I think he ends up probably getting another contract or renewing his option after this year, just based on how important he continues to be. So I think he still is going to get that next year. But at the same time, what's next? What's next? And so I think
we do bring somebody in. We need somebody in the middle, age wise and in their prime, because it's either Koulibaly who's 19 or Westwood who's 38. We need somebody that can bridge the gap between maturity and experience and
100%. 100%. All right, now we'll just finish up here quick with a little fast just prediction and preview of the New England Revolution game coming up here for Charlotte FC this Saturday, their last game before the World Cup break. I would say this is another, I thought Toronto FC this last weekend was an absolute must win, had to get all 3 points any way you can get them. I do feel like this New England game also same kind of situation because like we said earlier, still feels like they're not meeting expectations, a little bit behind the ball. Lee, what do you kind of expect from this game this weekend?
I think we drop more points at the bank. I think we lose 2-1.
Dang, coming right out with a score prediction. Okay,
yeah.
On the front end, what kind of leads you to all that? Is it just the way Charlotte have been playing New England recently? Is it just
New England's sort of they're hitting their stride, right? They're averaging somewhere close, I think, to 2 goals a game.
Yeah.
And Charlotte's, I think, is down. I think we're just a little above 1, right? So, obviously it could go any way, and typically at the bank we are better. Some things I'm thinking about is graduations are coming up this week, right? How's the crowd going to look Saturday, right? It's the team's kind of had enough. The fans had enough of not winning them and having decent games, right? So all these sort of come into play for Charlotte, and I just think New England's going to come in here, sneak one over on us, and walk away with 3 points.
Yeah, it's a trap game for Charlotte. If Charlotte's going to Charlotte, it's not a good night because historically New England's been able to find success against Charlotte. They're dangerous to Carlos Gil and just organized well.
Zaha leaves the red card.
Oh man.
His last hurrah with a red card, you're calling it now. I will say I think one issue also for this group is they're struggling against the top teams in the East. And I think, and this was going to be another topic, but we just ran out of time, but it was the top 4 in the East right now are starting to create a little bit of a gap from everybody else. And the top 4 right now is Nashville, Miami, New England, and Chicago. They all, besides Miami, have a game in hand on the rest of the Eastern Conference. And they're all Chicago's 4 points ahead of New York between 4th and 5th. And they have a game in hand on New York. And so when you're looking at Charlotte, they got swept by Nashville already. They drew against a rotated Inter Miami at home. They lost to New England on the road, so they haven't beaten. I mean, they haven't played Chicago yet, but they haven't beaten any of these top teams so far. And they've also, I mean, they're also running out of games to try to flip the script and get these 6-point games to actually catch up and make up some of the room as well. And so I think there's two ways. One, this makes it a really difficult matchup because they haven't shown up against the top teams in the Eastern Conference right now. But at the same time, it's also really pivotal because this is the last time. I mean, to get swept by Nashville and New England, I think this early in the season, especially when they're the top 1 and top 3 team in the Eastern Conference, and then that would separate New England from Charlotte by 10 points at the break. And I think that would be a devastating way to go into the World Cup break with only 19 games to potentially make up. And New England would still have a game in hand on top of that. And so I think you go into a break without a win here. You go into a break where you're looking at top 4 being potentially 5, 6, 7 points out of reach. And they have potentially at least a game in hand on you going into the break. So I think that's where, and you run out of games where you're actually getting to play them because you're waiting until decision day for Miami and later in the year to play Chicago.
Playing more road games.
Yep. And again, yes, more road games. So I think it gets tricky if they don't right the ship and go into this World Cup break with 2 straight wins. So I think that's a good quick way to wrap it up. Lee, we already got a score prediction out of you, 2-1. Bryan, what's your score prediction for this one?
2-1 Charlotte.
2-1 Charlotte. So 2-1 each way. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. I think it's going to be a difficult one as well. I do think New England still has some questions. Their schedule has been a little bit light. They've obviously taken advantage of it, but at the same time, I do think Charlotte has enough in them to at least get out of here with a point. Now, again, I don't think that's quite enough. They need all 3, but I think that's kind of where things kind of stand right now. There's a little bit less confidence in the fan base and just across the board of what I feel like the fortress has been breached a little bit right now. And so they need to prove it this weekend that fortress can hang strong. All right. Well, that was another awesome episode. Bryan, Lee, I appreciate you guys coming on and helping me through my first hosting gig on Top of 90.
Man.
Yeah. Jorge's like, man, I'm going to stay in Barca now.
Hey, if we win Saturday, he's still over there.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, look, how many Charlotte FC Sir Minty keychains will they give to keep Jorge in Barca if they win again 2 in a row going into the break?
That's it. Yeah. All of them.
Yeah. All right. Lee, where can people find you?
Yeah, find us on all the socials at COTFC Fan TV. After the games, we're outside the supporter section doing our fan interviews right after game. Get that raw feeling out of you guys. So nothing's edited. Whatever you want to say, come say it. And you do. So yes, at COTFC Fan TV on all the socials.
Any top clips that have come out recently that stand out as particularly memorable of late?
I would say the one that Bryan had
I had a Zoran thing with about 6 other people going.
Yeah.
Zoran out there.
A lot of people were calling for Zoran out, man. So it's going to be interesting how that story goes the rest of the season for sure.
Yeah.
That was Wednesday. They won Saturday.
Yeah.
There we go. Bryan, where can people find you?
IG at CLTFC Yeti Clan. We do a live show on YouTube every Tuesday night. Tomorrow you're joining us, so check us out. We recap the games, but it's more of a actual fans giving you your opinion. Like season ticket members that pay their money to go to the games, we just voice our opinion. So it's a different point of view.
Heck yeah, love
it. A good time
though. Love it. You can find me on X at Bam Maurer Media, Bam, and all written content, topin90.com. You can find all of us on socials at topin90. A lot of content coming out every day. Over and out.
Woo.